Hello and welcome to another episode of Throttle Stop Garage. In this episode, we're going to have a look at how we get the false floor put into the project car. So the false floor, all the floor mounted pedals require that you have your heels raised up off the ground. So in order to do that properly, we're going to need to put a false floor into the floor that we already have. Anyway, I'm going to I'll explain a little bit more, but right now I got to go take care of my dog. Give me a sec. This part didn't make it into the cleanup video simply because it's too much. It's not a huge project. It's just putting a floor in, a false floor at that, and there's some other things I have to figure out. Part of it's going to be seen and part of it will be covered by the carpet in the car, so I have to work that out. And I got a brand new set of dies for my bead roller, so I'm really excited to try those as we start making just some of the brackets and pieces that we have to do. So lots of captive nuts, lots of little bits of sheet metal work. Anyway, let's get to work. Okay, so this week I didn't get as much done during the week as I thought I would get done. Most of it was just out here, honestly, just doing a little bit of thinking, and it's been cold. Winter came back with a vengeance, so I don't know if you've ever worked in a garage like this, but it's really strange with the forced air and an open rafter. All my hot air is up here. It's way above my head. So as I'm speaking to you, my feet are freezing, and my head's quite a nice, comfortable temperature. So let's hope that lets my brain work today as we try to get the false floor put into the car. Now, I've scoped around YouTube and looked everywhere else, rally forums and other things. I simply can't find sort of a standard methodology that people would use to put these floor mount pedal boxes in and to create the right riser and space. So I sort of just thought about it a little bit, and I'm going to DIY it as always. Now I'm still happy with how everything is mounted in the car. We're not changing any of that. Don't fret. Everything there is finalized. I'm locked into that. I've done it 4 times. So I got to be happy with it. But the issue, of course, is the floor in the Volvo is slanted. So there's a section of it that's straight and a section of it that has a tilt, and it's the section of it that has a tilt that's the problem. Now what I've decided to do is to lay I'm going to use some aluminum sheet actually to create the platform that my feet will go on to articulate the pedals. But in order to do that, I need to first handle the level issue, so it's simply not flat. And in some places that means we're coming quite a ways up the footwell. But I also don't want it to look weird, you know, the usual, right? I don't want these things to look like I built them in my garage, so even though that's clearly where it all happened. So we've got our aluminum sheets ready. I've been patterning all week, just making the patterns, remaking the patterns, trying out different ideas. I guess that's part of doing it. And I went shopping, right? So I now have a box, like boxes and boxes of weld nuts. So, hey, the furnace turned off. That makes me happy. Been waiting all morning, really, honestly, for that thing to shut off, just so I can get this recorded. But so I bought 2 different styles of weld nuts, so I don't have to be cleaning the finish off of these things. They're all just raw steel, which is just fantastic. Now they're expensive, but I ate the receipt. It tasted fantastic. I'm not telling my wife what these cost, and she doesn't watch the channel, so it's fine, right? So I have both the tab style and I have the square ones with the little pinchy fingers on them that grab onto the sheet metal. So these ones you can mount. If I had a spot welder, you could just pinch them in this way, or I could just add a couple extra little punched holes and then they mount in. They also have a little, again, there's just a little protrusion up, so they mount into a hole. Now if you, these are metric, all the fasteners in the car are metric. So as we put this part in, it's an 8mm hole that this is received into, and these aren't the cheap Chinesium versions of this. These are the fancy pants ones. Again, we spent some money on this stuff. And they're still cheap, right? I mean, versus cleaning this stuff off. Now, this isn't a high-strength location. This is just holding a sheet metal panel. So these are sort of the perfect solution for that. And the actual nut, like the square nuts, those are meant for when you actually need to put a little bit of gronk on the thing and have it held down. So an 8mm hole gets those mounted up and in. They happen to be 13mm wide. So that's going to control what we're going to do today. So I'm just going to zip over to the whiteboard and give you a rundown on the problem. Works out like this. if we're looking in at the driver's floor, and this is the transmission tunnel here, and that's the sheet metal join there. I'm sort of hoping this is, I'm using purple, and we'll make the lines large so you can see them. Then the first, it's about 20 centimeters. The first 20 centimeters of that floor is flat. Okay, so it's perfectly flat. That goes in towards the pedals. Then it slopes away, and that's about, it's about twice that distance, about 40 centimeters. And then we're going to go 40 millimeters worth of rise, actually, to get that back to straight. Now, in order to accommodate that little fastener, I'm going to need, so by the time you work out the fastener and the width, and you know, you're going to put a screw through it, and I don't like cutting screws, so I try to get some of the dimensions so I don't have to do things. Like, it's sort of being actively lazy. Like, if I think a little bit, I don't have to think later, and I don't like thinking later. So if I ponder it, I take the material thickness of the sheet that's going to comprise the floor, then the sheet that'll mount on top of all of this, so there'll be obviously a mount here, and then this with the slope means my sheet metal part's got to look like that. So I want this distance here, you know, we've got our false floor is going to sit on top of all of this, and then I've got a nut, my weld nut here, and then I'm going to put a fastener into this whole arrangement, and I want it set such that my fastener isn't going to hit the floor, right? And it'll provide enough grip strength, but I can also minimally can shrink this to as small the rise that step is above. I can have as small as possible. Now, once I start out towards the sill, I got lots of room. I could put a 40 mil fastener in there. I still won't hit the bottom with all the other pieces. So for this piece over here, if we say that this maximally, this dimension here from the top of the sill plate to the bottom of here, let's make that 12 millimeters. So if I use a 10 millimeter fastener, I'll be 2 millimeters off the bottom. Lots of room. Actually, I don't even need to be that, because by the time you've gone through these two things, I could use an 8 millimeter fastener. I just need to get through the fastener. I don't need to have, you know, 4 threads out the bottom of it. So if I did that, say 12, I might make it 10, just thinking out loud, 10 millimeters for that spacing. That's going to be plenty. And then with the weld nut being only 13 millimeters wide, means that I can make a very narrow sheet metal channel to hold all of this. So this part here. The problem is that gets complicated, because folding it, the smaller, the narrower the part, the harder it is to fold it, right? It's just a lever, right? If you're using the sheet metal as the lever, it's reasonably easy to do that. So I spent a lot of time trying to work out how I could do this. Now, I could create separate sections in here just to, you know, for all the other YouTube engineers. I could create separate sections in here with my return folds, and I could do little pieces along the way and leave these open. There's a million different ways you could do it. The easiest way, I think, to do it, I'm always, again, actively lazy. I'm trying to find the easiest way to do that. I think what I'm going to do is bend up a channel that's, well, it'll be about 20 millimeters wide, and then it'll have my return flanges and everything on it, but I won't put the return flanges on it. I'm just going to put the 20 mil wide plus whatever I'd need for the return flange, and then I will trim and I will cut those areas back to what I need. I have no idea how that's going to work, but I've got enough 18 gauge to give it a couple of tries. So we'll give this a blast this morning, and we'll see how it works out. But this is the sort of stuff that'll stump you for, like, it's just the stupidest little thing, right? Like, you're working on your project again. If somebody came in the garage from 1 year ago, if they were here at episode whatever 10, and they walked in the door like when I was still fiddling with the frame, which they still haven't finished welded, and they walked in today, they would say, you know, your car looks exactly the same. And I would say, get out of my garage, because there's so much work that's been done. But it's it's these kind of details. Boy, they vacuum up time. They kill confidence. You end up making those parts 2 or 3 times and chucking them in the corner. Hey, that's the way these kinds of builds go. I'm fine with that. I don't. No one cares when my car gets done, except for you, right? You know, 2020, right? We got to get it by 2020. All right, so enough yapping out of me. Let's get to work. Okay, we're just doing a few quick calculations before getting the layout started. So we're just jumping right in and starting to knock off this part. So really nothing hard or things that you haven't seen before. Again, every time I watch anybody on YouTube cutting sheet metal with the old wheel of death, I wonder why they don't buy one of those Beverly shears. Boy, those things are good. Wonderful tool. Anyways, there's the part folded up. Boy, that didn't take too long. Yeah, here's that chunk of rail, one of the other leftover parts it's gonna factor in this. You can't bend that thing to get it to a full 90 degrees. So here I am just working away. This took most of the day. I've tagged a piece of aluminum onto it. That's at least the right distance. A little flipper spoon, knocking that thing around. Keep increasing the intensity with the hammers, right? Alright, now we get the other part laid out. So we get the angles laid out, we get the flanges laid out, and we're going to get those bent up and put in place. Well, it's hard to believe that it took me almost a full day to make that part, but there it is made. I'm very happy with the way that it turned out. So this gives me the level floor that I need in the car to mount the false floor. So it's sort of a minimum distance here that I can get both that weld nut and a fastener into it. I think what did it finish off at? About 3/8 of an inch, so 10 millimeters, and that's what I wanted it to finish off at, so I'm pretty happy with that. And then this is that 1.25 inch here that I needed. I changed some of the dimensions from what I was writing down over there as I got started on it, and I haven't put the nuts in yet. It's no point. That's easy. We'll get to that when we get to it. But this piece can now go in the car, and what we're going to do is... I'll take you into the car and show you what we're going to do. Just a little bit of a shot. Okay, so inside the car we go. And that's where the part fits. I didn't go all the way up perfectly tight to the tunnel simply because the radius on the flange on the tunnel was preventing me from getting it to sit nice and flat. And I did spec the width to fit really nicely in between those two ribs there. So now what we'll do with the rest in here is we'll then build a perimeter frame that goes and follows all the way around here, and then this center right where the brake is, we can just build one rib through the middle, and it can just be flat, so it doesn't have to be anything difficult actually. So that's going to be quite nice in there, and that's enough with it's going to be a 2 mil aluminum plate in there. That's all that's really going to be needed within that. It's not structural, you're just putting your feet on it. It doesn't need any more than that. Okay, so let's get going on building the perimeter frame part, the rib part, and a few of the other complex pieces that make up what in the end you'll never see. Let's get to work.
Okay, this is that 16 gauge again. That shear. This is the Chinese knockoff one with just a tuned blade. Moves through 16 gauge like it's butter. No problem at all. Apparently it'll cut 12 gauge. Look at the thinness of that strip that I just cut off. It was like, I don't know, 20, 30 thou. Anyway, there's the brake, knocking some angles. These are going to be the side support parts. And there I whip them quickly through that set of dies. Alright, now we're going to cut the tapered part, and that's coming out of 18 gauge again. So after playing with that 16 gauge for a bit, this 18 seems like it's really nice and light. Out comes the brake, and we'll get the folds put into this part pretty quickly.
So yesterday I finished up this piece, right? So that's going to be the center rib, or at least I think it might be the center rib. I'm not convinced. So even when I was building it, I had lots of trouble building this. I had as much trouble building this as I did the other piece. Mainly, again, it's the tightness of this. This is only 3/8 of an inch tall. Right, so almost nothing. There's nothing to bend. It's super tough to do. And I guess I decided to go with this, designing on the fly. I'm not too sure how I'm going to actually map it out, but originally I thought, well, I should put a flat in the floor for my feet, right? And then a little drop, then this little taper off drop down part. And then I looked at it as I was putting it in, and with the 3/8 up, it didn't look like it was all that much at the front edge. And then I thought, well, I don't know, just do it as one slope. And then I rolled those pieces of 16 gauge, right? So you saw the beautiful dies. All the way from Who's Your Profiles. So that was, they had a Christmas special on. These were like $65 with all the parts. Send Joe your money. These are absolutely gorgeous. And I mean, now I'm thinking about upgrading my bead roller, right? I mean, God, you buy a nice die and then the whole world falls apart for you. But you can never, when you're bending the stiffer material, just to be slightly off topic for a second, when you're bending that thicker, so that's 16 gauge is what those side rails are going to be made out of, or what they are made out of. And you know, my sheet metal brake is pretty good. It still has a little bit of flex in the leaf in the middle, and I'll address that at some point in time. I just need to stiffen it up. It's no big deal. But I haven't done it yet. So what happens is you end up with different radiuses at the end, and then it's a little bit loose in the middle. And now, boy, I don't even know if I care. I just take the die, a couple of passes through this, and that's just factory, dead straight, beautiful. Anyways, I get nothing for doing this. Just if you're buying tools, buy good stuff. Anyways, these are Who's Your Profiles again. So just a shout out to them. Back to this part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another one. It's going to be as per the original design. So it's going to have the flat, and then it's going to have the angle. Now I don't have to redo any of the sheet metal calculations. I just have to redo the sheet metal. But again, there's going to be no way easily for me to make the first. I had figured out about 6 inches of this before. The first 6 inches of it straight at one, and then the next is tapered. There's no way for me to do that easily with the tools that I have in this shop. Like, I just can't figure out. Well, can't figure out how to do it out of one piece. I can figure out how to do it out of 2 pieces. That's too easy. So we're gonna do it out of 2 pieces. We're gonna get that knocked out here this morning, and then we're gonna get the plate cut. That's gonna go on the floor. I'm not leaving the shop today. I'll say it to you now. Let's see if I can do it. Until I have some plate, not all of the plate, but some plate cut for the false floor. I really, really, really need to get that done. Okay, let's get to work.
Okay, so this second piece is getting made in 2 parts, so I'm able to go to the scrap bin and find some pieces of sheet metal that are right size and get them folded off. I actually didn't do 6 inches. I decided to go with 8 inches. Again, designing on the fly. It's terrible. So with the calculations done and the sheet cut, we'll get these parts bent up and welded together. Relative to everything else that was on this job, this was this was pretty straightforward actually, so I was happy with the way this worked out. A wrench trick is about the only way to bend a flange for me when they get small and tight like that. I'm tuning those bends with that wide chisel and a V-block, and that seems to work pretty well, so I'm happy enough with that. Alright, with all that done, here we go, welding it up. It did literally go as quickly as this. This is just about real time for fabricating this part. Nothing to it at all. You know, dress the welds, you couldn't tell that part was welded for love nor money. Alright, so with that paper pattern made, we are going to commit to the sheet. Now it's a little bit scary at the start when you go to do that. I've only got enough 2mm sheet, just enough to do all the parts that I need. So there's no excess, I can't make any mistakes. Again, the shear, 2mm aluminum. Jeez, just total butter, people. Don't buy the right tools. What can I say? Alright, so it needs a little bit of fettling here to get it into the right shape. It's just a flat sheet, so this part's actually easy. Wait for the next episode, it gets harder. Alright, so just finishing off some of the edge work here and make sure it's nice and tidy. For no reason other. I'm anal, right? So I want all my sheet work to be that way. Had to move a few things around. What you always do, right? Again, the paper fits one way, the metal fits another way, right?
Alright, that's a wrap for another episode. I've just run out of time here in the garage. We got most of what I wanted to get done this weekend finished. So as soon as I had to remake that one rib for the middle, I knew there was no chance that I was going to actually get all of the floor and pieces that go behind the pedals done. I just lost it at that point. There is no chance. So there's not enough hours in the day. I could be out here until midnight, and I'm still not going to get too far ahead on this one at this time. So we're going to have a part 2. Yay. Anyway, the finished up product. Totally pleased with it. Anyways, this is a piece of 5052 2mm thick. That's what I'm using for the floor. With the outer edges supported, plus the rib in the middle, I could dance on this thing. It's not going to go anywhere. Anyway, I think it's going to be plenty strong. I've tried to roll beads on it, on some 2mm thick plate in my bead roller. There's no chance, people, so it's not going to work. It's just far too thick. And I don't think it needs it in this case, so we're going to go with that. Whenever you're working with aluminum, just final tip on our way out the door, don't forget to give your inside corners and things, give them generous radiuses and be quite careful with it. Aluminum tends to crack. 5052 is really the sort of desirable material for this. It bends a lot easier than 6061, and it's often what you're buying if you're buying thinner plate, right? Unless you're buying 3003, which really I can hardly find that in Canada. It's hard for me to locate locally anyways. So this is going to be the material for most of the rest of the construction. I still have the other parts to make, right? So we still have to... There's stuff falling everywhere. I still have the closing panel to make for the pedals. All right, so this is the one that got left off the table. So it's quite complicated. It's late in the day, and I'd rather not start a complicated part because we all know that ends up populating the scrap bin. And to be honest, I'm not exactly sure where some of this stuff ends up. So I need to get these parts sort of roughly placed in the car, and then I can start working out. Because you know what, you make a pattern based on cardboard. As I start adding the pieces in, you start refining your finalized part. This is a finalized part, right? So I want this one to go properly. And you never know how those things are going to work out as you go. Anyway, so that's a wrap. We're going to take you into the car really quickly just to show you how it all fits. And then, well, that'll be it for this episode. With all the bracing, it's of course not installed, and there's little bits of fitting and fiddling that still has to go. And try to do this. that would have created a bad noise. Anyways, it's not bent and folded and whatever yet, but you can see how that roughly fits in. And it'll go down and tuck in quite nicely. It doesn't look weird in terms of the car. Once the seat's in there, you'll never know. All right, that's everything. Thank you very much for tuning in. I really appreciate all the support I've been getting lately anyway, so it's nice to have, like, there's 144 of you now, and occasionally 100 people tune in to watch, so I really do appreciate that. Like and subscribe if you would, and share it around a little bit. Hey, I'm having fun, and we're actually getting some progress done, so anyways, more videos to come. Part 2, I hope, will be up next. I'm not going to leave this one alone until I'm done. I'm going to be a dog on a bone on this one. Anyway, have a good week, and we'll see you in the next episode.